In the center of the Mediterranean, in Crete, archaeologists are shedding new light on a civilization that we thought we knew well, the Minoans. Between 3000 and 1400 BC, more than a millennium before classical Greece, the Minoans cultivated an art whose modernity and refinement still fascinates us. Their frescoes are among the finest masterpieces of ancient art. The Minoans are also the first European nation to master writing. What mobilizes archaeological research today are the edifices erected around the island. We call them palaces. Their labyrinthine layout has long put scientists on the wrong track. But thanks to a new method of analysis inspired by mathematics, archaeologists have finally understood the palace's use, and they are now rewriting the history of the Minoans. In Crete, archaeology has always had to stake out its position in relation to one of the most enduring ancient myths. Greek mythology contributed greatly to shaping the image we have of the Minoans, including their name, derived from the legendary King Minos. Along with his architect, Daedalus, it's said that he built a huge labyrinth to lock up a monstrous creature, half man, half bull, the famous Minotaur. Remember the myth? After killing the Minotaur, the young Theseus escaped from the labyrinth with the help of a ball of yarn given to him by Ariane, the daughter of King Minos. This myth, one man wanted to believe in it, the British archaeologist Arthur Evans. In 1900, he organized a major excavation at Knossos. His excavations reveal a monumental and labyrinthine building. He finds a bull fresco and discovers a throne room. For him, there's no doubt. He's looking at the palace of King Minos and its mythical labyrinth. When the Belgian archaeologist Jan Driessen began exploring Crete 30 years ago, Arthur Evans' theory was an almost unassailable dogma.
Evans's excavations revealed a very large building here, with several hundred rooms organized on different floors, up to 5 floors. There are corridors, skylights, large rooms, small rooms, storage rooms. It has a complex layout that makes us think of the labyrinth from Greek mythology. Evans gave archaeological and historical validation to the legend of King Minos and his labyrinth.
Thrilled by his discovery, Arthur Evans gets carried away by his imagination. He wants to revive the palace, and he orders restorations that are rather questionable. Starting in the 1920s, during the Art Deco period, Evans rebuilt large parts of the building using material that was in vogue at the time, reinforced concrete.
With his reconstructions, he forced his idea of Minoan civilization on our imagination. He imposed his ideas of this building, which from then on was called a palace, although the archaeological reality was quite different.
And he did it on a large scale. Did that hinder the work of later archaeologists?
Yes, because unfortunately, at that time, they didn't make good architectural plans. So he hid the original ruins under his project in the 1920s and 30s. And everything that he hid remains inaccessible today. Unfortunately, dismantling his work is not possible.
The Palace of Knossos, as seen today, would be a representation of his imagination. And whereas Arthur Evans wanted to believe in a myth, Jan Driessen wants to rely on science. He's therefore taken over the investigation from scratch and reviewed the archaeological data. What truly was this place? Was it a royal palace? Did King Minos ever really exist? Jan's investigation began with a simple observation that he wants me to see. He brings me to the entrance to the site.
Imagine if you were a Minoan in the Bronze Age and you'd never visited the palace of Knossos. You took these walkways. It's like following a golden thread leading directly to the palace. And what's interesting is that it leads to a very special place.
The visitors are guided to this high courtyard. And here we are.
In the central courtyard.
Exactly.
The Mesopotamian, Egyptian, and Greek palaces on the mainland are designed around a central axis. Their corridors all lead to one place, the throne room.
But this isn't the throne room.
No, it's the central courtyard. You can come from the north, south, east, or west, and all the corridors lead to this place. The central courtyard is truly the heart of these buildings.
Jan wanted to confirm this field observation. With his team, he closely re-examined other Minoan palaces discovered in Malia, Phaistos, and Zakros. Palaces with similar plans, all built around a large central courtyard. They analyzed these plans using a mathematical method called space syntax. It's a method for analyzing circulation within a building and the connections between the rooms, to understand how visitors circulated inside and to deduce its use. The building plan is modeled as a mathematical graph. Each circle represents a room, and the lines symbolize access between the rooms. The archaeologists can thus identify the most connected room, the true heart of the building. The archaeologist Quentin Letesson is a specialist in space syntax. Space syntax is a relatively new tool in archaeology, very useful for studying buildings and architecture. I use it myself, but it doesn't come from archaeology, does it?
No, it was calibrated and built by urban planners for themselves and architects. The goal is to understand how buildings and society interact. For us, it allows us to understand what buildings or their remains can teach us about their original uses and how humans interacted with them. For the Minoan palaces shown here, it's interesting because they're complex structures and modeling them has taught us a lot. Here's the diagram of the Palace of Malia, and you see the importance of the central courtyard here and all the corridors organized around it. It's striking that all Minoan palaces have exactly the same type of plan. In the Palace of Phaistos, we find the same thing, an important central courtyard, and the other rooms make an arborescence. The same logic is also found in Zakros, where you have an important central courtyard. For example, in Egyptian or Mesopotamian palaces, the graphs clearly indicate all the paths leading to the throne room. But not here. You see that the networks lead to the central courtyard. And that's a striking difference.
Why was the palace built around the central courtyard? And why is the supposed throne room found by Evans off to the side? Jan and his colleagues are beginning to have doubts. Are we really in the presence of a royal palace? To find out, archaeologists again study the supposed throne room. For a century, it's been presented as that of King Minos. It seems small for a throne room, considering the size of this site.
Right. Almost everything here is original. The benches, the throne. Only the frescoes with the griffins were restored by Evans.
The animals with the body of a lion and the head of a raptor.
Correct.
These griffins put Jan on the trail of a completely different interpretation than Evans.
On the island of Santorini, we found this fresco. You see griffins and you see the throne. But what do you see in the middle?
A woman?
Yes, probably a priestess who took her place on the throne to celebrate religious ceremonies or rituals.
So if it's not a royal throne, King Minos has nothing to do with it?
No, it's more likely the throne of a goddess or a priestess.
So maybe it's something more related to rituals than with political power.
Exactly.
According to the archaeologists, this throne is not that of a king, but of a priestess. A hypothesis that many frescoes seem to support. In the Heraclean Museum, Jan was able to confirm women's central place in the Minoans' religion. They are often represented in a dominant position, embodying goddesses or priestesses. But what really surprised Jan was the absence of royal figures in these images. No man is represented in a position of authority, with the exception of one fresco. According to Arthur Evans, this crowned figure was absolute proof of the existence of a king, maybe Minos himself.
Here you see the iconic mural of the palace of Knossos, the prince with lilies. In fact, it's a reconstruction by Evans. The crown that he put on the man is a crown that should be worn by a griffin or sphinx. And this object was certainly held by another person. Some reconstructions show that these were boxers, so they have nothing to do with a prince or a king.
Only a few fragments of the relief are original. A piece of the torso, his contracted arm, a biceps, a thigh, a calf, and a lily crown. In re-examining Evans' excavation reports, archaeologists realized that these pieces actually came from different characters. But Evans consciously assembled the pieces to make just one character. So this image before our eyes, as iconic as it is, never really existed?
Never. It's a pure creation by Evans.
A missing king. A throne room that is not one. And palaces that are not organized like royal palaces. The archaeological reality strays farther away from the myth. Archaeologists must explore another site before invalidating Evans' theory. If a monarchy ruled over the island, they should be able to find the royal tombs. At Sissi, in the east of the island, Jan's been leading an excavation for 10 years. He's unearthed a large Minoan building, recognizable by its central courtyard. Nearby, with his anthropologist colleague Aurore Schmidt, Jan is about to reveal a necropolis. Aurore, what type of burial do we find here?
Here we're finding almost only collective graves.
And during your excavations, have elements emerged that make you believe that there are rich or poor people, people of different statuses here?
Well, some individuals can be distinguished from others because they're in a coffin vessel, a large ceramic container, such as this one. But they're always surrounded by other dead. So we're still in a collective context. Even if there are small distinctions, we're always in a collective context.
So there are no large individual tombs of the super rich with elaborate furniture which have appeared?
No. In Minoan Crete, there were no princely or royal tombs, as there are on the continent, and after in Minoan Crete.
Is this an additional argument against the idea of the existence of a Minoan king?
Yes, because almost all kings were buried in monumental royal tombs. But here it's not the case. What we see here are collective graves. They sought social cohesion in life and in death. They tried to keep the people together, the large clans, the extended families. There was truly a wish to be buried together.
At this stage of the investigation, Jan is sure. At that time, the Minoans were not directed by a king. The mythical Minos probably never existed. A new phase of the investigation thus begins. If this was not a monarchy, how were the Minoans organized? What role was occupied by these big clans Jan talked about? In the digs around the palace, archaeologists have unearthed large houses that could accommodate up to 50 people. They were probably homes for these clans or the extended families. As for the palaces, if they were not royal residences, what were they used for? Again, Jan thinks the answer can be found in the central courtyard. What function did it have? What happened here? During excavations of the Palace of Malia, archaeologists made discoveries that helped them reinterpret the function of these buildings.
We found kitchens around the sides, and there are a large number of storage rooms. In the east, west, north, and outside the large building, there are storage rooms. They were probably for different types of food: corn, grains, olives, or wine.
A lot of storage, well beyond what was required to feed only the inhabitants within the complex.
I can't say if they held enough food to feed the entire city, but yes, certainly several times during the year, maybe 5, 10, 15 times. This indicates that there were great feasts, no doubt with ritual and religious aspects. There were large gatherings of people eating and drinking together.
What archaeological elements support this idea?
Inside the palace, but also outside, there are great deposits of small vases and goblets used by the participants. And sometimes there are high-quality ceramics and broken pieces. So perhaps in a ritual after the meal, the vessels were left here as part of the ceremony that took place in the building. And the most suitable place where they would gather to eat and drink together, possibly at the end of the day, was the central courtyard.
The central courtyard was therefore the place for great ritual gatherings, a hypothesis confirmed by iconography. On this mural found at Knossos, we see a crowd of men and women gathered in a central courtyard. Some also thought that bullfighting took place, as is evoked in another fresco. But no archaeological remains can attest to that, unlike for the feasting. Great ritual banquets on a large scale. But what was their role in Minoan society?
I think it was to maintain integration and create social cohesion. They invited local or neighboring inhabitants here to unite around a common idea, which was not highly religious, but helped make them all feel Minoan. We can't identify a central power, a royal power, but it's quite possible that the power was shared in some way.
The Minoans therefore formed a society organized around large families or clans. Archaeologists believe that the women held important roles within these groups. Large buildings, called palaces, were at the heart of their politics, religious life, and their local economy. They were surely managed in a shared way by the clans. Archaeologists know that around 1700 BC, these buildings were partially rebuilt and that their architecture became more complex. According to them, this means that at the time, the Minoan society living here communally gradually became more segmented into a hierarchy.
As you see on this graph, there's a series of spaces that grows in rows like trees do. These different arborescents are different zones in the palace.
So there are different areas that are highlighted by space syntax. Does this reflect a change in their society?
We think a hierarchy developed. Our idea is that Minoan society's hierarchical structure progressed according to its different classes of people in terms of age, gender, and function. And the building developed so people who need not meet each other would not cross paths inside. The building reinforces that hierarchy. The architecture made it possible for activities to move about inside without being in competition with each other.
Looking at the map, we're back to the theory of the labyrinth as the plan becomes more complex.
Yes, the plan is very complex, but we called it a labyrinth because we didn't understand its logic. We're used to seeing Greek temples dominated by symmetry and simplicity. So when we see a plan like this, we're baffled, because this plan is far from symmetry and simplicity. But this plan is the image of their society, which was becoming more complex, in which social relations are becoming more intense, and so they require a more structured spatial organization.
The architecture reflects societal evolution?
Exactly.
So people who live together are living more separated?
That's right. They are separated in the wings and areas we mentioned. But there's the central courtyard. In this place of convergence, they stage ceremonies that maintain Minoan society's ancient communal nature. So the groups in charge of the palace use this courtyard to remind the people that they still form a cohesive group. And that activity takes place in the central courtyard.
An instrument of social cohesion.
Exactly.
In the absence of a centralized power, the Minoans use these collective ceremonies to keep their social order solid. Thanks to this investigation, the Minoan civilization appears to be very different from what we imagined before. The remaining unanswered questions may find their answers in these tablets. But the Minoans' writings are still undecipherable today. The Minoan civilization has yet to reveal all its secrets. Several years ago, you started a large dig here. What are you hoping to find?
I'd like to better understand Minoan society, the way it functioned. We've talked about groups participating in large feasts inside these palaces. I'd like to better understand these groups, their nature, their internal hierarchy, for example.
You've dedicated a big part of your career studying the Minoan society. What fascinates you about them?
The fact that it's so unique. I find certain things here that I've never seen in Egypt or the Middle East or with the Romans, whether it be art or ceramics. Everything here was produced with an obvious joie de vivre that we don't find in other civilizations, contemporary or earlier. The Greeks are different. They're very organized, so their art is very animated, very natural, something that's familiar to us even today. And that's, without a doubt, what's thrilled me from the very start.